So one of the consequences of studying about work energy and not so much power, but this chapter of work energy power, is we arrive at this law of the law of conservation of energy. The statement is of two parts. It says that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Which basically states that the amount of energy that is there in the universe is finite. There is a certain amount of energy that is there, whether we are aware of it or not aware of it, that's a different question. But the amount of energy has to be finite. And the second part of the statement is that it can be converted from one form to another. That immediately follows from whatever we did in the previous class, energy transformations. And it is for stating these two claims together that you get 1 mark for the definition of the law of conservation of energy. It's an question that is often asked in the examination, so you will do well to commit this to memory, the statements to memory. But the basic idea is you can't add any more energy to the universe, nor can you remove energy from the universe, but energy can always be transformed. So if you see that there is any claim, and there are lots of videos on Facebook and YouTube that claims perpetual energy, perpetual energy machines, okay, often claimed as being ancient devices that can give you a lot of energy from some kind of a perpetual motion. All bunk, this is not possible. Every machine has got its own losses because of friction, mainly because of friction, but other forms of energy that gets converted, which is unintentional. And so therefore the amount of energy that you put into a machine is going to be the amount of energy that you are going to get out of it, and there will be losses. So therefore eventually anything that you set into motion, like say for example a pendulum which you set oscillating, it's going to eventually come to rest. Okay, so for something as simple as a pendulum, if there isn't perpetual motion that is possible, it cannot be there for any complex machine. But then there are always these claims, and the law of conservation of energy with some laws of thermodynamics says that this is impossible to do. Now, how do we arrive at this conclusion? How do we know that this is true? From the basis of whatever we have done so far in terms of potential energy and kinetic energy conversions. The example that you are supposed to have studied and that you are supposed to be familiar with is again the example of an object which is raised to a certain height h, when it has the energy, gravitational potential energy of mgh. So we say that the mechanical energy in this object, possessed by this object, is equal to the potential energy possessed by this object plus the kinetic energy possessed by this object. Okay, so you can say that when the object is at height h, the potential energy is mgh, and the kinetic energy, because the velocity is 0, will be 0. So you can write it as half mv square, but v is equal to 0. So therefore the kinetic energy will be 0. So mgh plus 0 equals mgh. So you say that at this position A, the mechanical energy possessed by the total mechanical energy possessed by the body is equal to mgh. Now allow the ball to fall. Okay, and let us say it drops to some position. You can keep it as halfway, you can keep it as slightly over halfway also. That doesn't really matter. The ball is falling. Now at this position, new position B, what is the mechanical energy that it possesses? So I'll just get rid of this section over here. At B, mechanical energy will still be equal to the potential energy plus the kinetic energy. Okay, the potential energy at this point, uh, if you take this distance to be some distance x that it has fallen, right, then the potential energy will of course be m times g times h minus x. Is that clear? Why it will be h minus x? Because h is the total height, x is the height which it has fallen. So we are examining position B. And now the kinetic energy. So you can use the same equation v square is equal to u square plus 2as to find out what is the velocity. Okay, initial velocity is 0, so that will be 0 plus 2 times acceleration, you can keep it as g, correct. The acceleration is the acceleration due to gravity, and the distance that it has fallen is x. So v square is equal to 2gx. Now at this point of time, don't convert the v into square root of 2gx, that doesn't help. Why? Because kinetic energy is equal to half mv square, right? So what you will get over here is, expanding this, mgh minus mgx, so that is the expansion of that, plus 1 by 2 m times v square can be written as 2gx. All right, so you can divide out. Beg your pardon, did I make a mistake somewhere?
You wrote mgh minus mgh. You forgot the x.
Here, thank you. Thank you for the correction. So you get mgh minus mgx plus mgx. So naturally mgx and mgx will get cancelled out and you get again the value mgh. So now you can see that the energy possessed by the object B, sorry, at the position B as the object is falling through, is also equal to mgh, the mechanical energy. All right, and this is proof that conservation of energy is true, because the potential energy got converted into kinetic energy in this case. And of course, when the object is at position C, just as it is going to hit the ground, you can use exactly the same method and the same equations to arrive at the same answer, because in the case C, your potential energy will be 0, because the height is almost equal to 0, approaching very close to 0. So therefore you can take it that potential energy will be negligible. The kinetic energy, using this equation, you can again find out. I'm going to leave that part to you, but I can assure you that at that position also the total mechanical energy will be equal to mgh. This is again an equation that needs, a derivation that needs to be studied. Okay, and when I mean studied, you look through it, you try to do the derivation on your own without referring to the textbook, and then you will arrive at the places where you are not very sure of things, and then you will re-examine it, retry it, and then when you get the mathematics right, you will have a clear understanding of why is it that the law of conservation of energy works, and why this is a good example to give for that. This is sometimes asked one stage or the other. The derivation, the entire derivation itself is too long to be asked in the board examination, but some part of it or the other is asked. So they may tell you that an object fell through a certain height and it came to a new position like over here. Prove that the mechanical energy of the object is still equal to the potential energy at the same height. What does this tell you? What law of physics supports your answer? So it can be a combined total of 4 to 5 marks, and some parts you will have to do this derivation. This part of it is the most important one. This is fairly straightforward. Okay, so I hope you will practice and you will make sure that you are able to do the derivation on your own. So moving on from there, uh, the textbook itself so this is the derivation part of it. Sometimes they just simply ask you to draw the diagram. Okay, draw the diagram that proves that law of conservation of energy is true, that an object's mechanical energy at all positions during free fall is always equal to mgh. So you just have to draw the diagram, and then you have to show that mechanical energy equals potential energy plus kinetic energy equals mgh. You don't have to do the derivation. Okay, so if they simply asked you to draw a diagram, draw the sketch, write down simply that me is equal to p plus k, this statement that you can see over here on the top. That's an easier one. They give you a couple of marks for that. Easy pickings, you shouldn't lose out on it. So practice the diagram as well. So in the following page, it's just explanations that are given in terms of telling you that the potential energy must be the only kind of energy that gets converted into the kinetic energy, and therefore this law is true. There is a graph over here. They have never asked this graph before. I have never seen it as a question in the last 5-6 years. So you can have a look at it. It's not a big deal. They may give the graph and ask you to do an interpretation. That's the worst they can do. So you can be prepared for that. You could also be asked to show it in this chart, in this tabular form. Okay, that's also again going to be very easy. Basically, they've just broken up the kinetic energy and potential energy at different parts. It does not involve any derivation. You just have to memorize and put the the values in, and then you get the answer. And then the last section is the application of the principle of conservation of energy to a simple pendulum. Um, Sometimes they just ask this question. They give you the example of the simple pendulum, and they tell you that a simple pendulum oscillates to and fro about its mean position. Which law governs the motion of this pendulum? Or they'll say that the mechanical energy of the pendulum at all positions is always the same. Which law supports your answer? Do you agree, etc., etc.? So you have to answer questions of that sort. Sometimes they ask you to draw a diagram. You can draw the diagram. Again, this is a diagram that is for practice. So you have to practice this diagram, and you have to also practice this diagram. Okay, so these two diagrams are important for you to know and practice. You can read the description that is given over there of the experiment. It explains why and how the conservation of energy governs the movement of the pendulum. So with that, we come to the end of this entire chapter. If there are any doubts or questions that you would like to ask, you can speak now.